And I remember laughing and joking with the person doing the test, like, I'm immune from everything, me, nothing's gonna get me. A couple of minutes later, it started to dawn on me. I've had COVID. I've had COVID, and like, it was almost like I'd been resurrected. And so this was a massive, life-changing lifeline for me.
What were you like before COVID?
Not as nice as I am now, I'll tell you.
Well, COVID did you a favour then. Welcome to Tommyfield Live, a chance to meet. Let's join the audience now, live from our radio theatre stage. Very good afternoon, everybody. Welcome along to Tommyfield Live on this Saturday afternoon, the 23rd of March 2024. It's Ian Wolstenholme here with you for the next hour. Our guest today is making a welcome return visit to the radio theatre stage, and I'm clutching in my hand a reminder of something that we kind of look at as we pass the awards that Oldham Community Radio has received over the years, and this was one back in 2022, presented to Tommyfield Live, put it down at the camera, Oldham Community Radio, for COVID and community rebuild. Perhaps today more than ever is an opportunity to re-reflect on those dark times that affected so many people. Today is actually the 4th anniversary since the first UK lockdown. We joke about it. I do my not so world famous impression of Boris, which I won't do today because it doesn't merit that. Since the end of the pandemic, there have been so many conversations about what happens in the future, what happens in the present. There's been TV series showing some of the very, very traumatic scenes in our NHS hospitals. Most recently, we sat down to watch one of these mini-series, Breathless. I'm sure many people did, and it's impacted on so many people, including my guest. A welcome return to our friend and colleague, Mike Gill, everybody. It's a little while since you were sat there with Graydon, first time around, Mike, as a can I say, as a community radio, can I say a virgin?
Something like that, you could say that. Yeah, and it was in March, and it was March 2022 that I was here, so
2 years.
I got addicted to community radio.
That's it. I mean, you see, once you're bitten by the bug, there's no getting away. I'm sure for the benefit of our Saturday morning listeners who perhaps don't listen to programmes during the week. What do you mean you don't? You really need to start making a note in the diary. Our Oldham Today programme throughout Monday to Friday. On the Thursday programme, Mike and Dave host that particular edition. And really, I suppose that community radio, before we talk and revisit your journey, Mike, and talk about what's happened since, I suppose what we do here at Oldham Community Radio has kind of almost been another therapy. Is that a reasonable thing?
I would go further than that. I would say that for me, it was a lifesaver. Wow. Because when I first came here and did the first Oldham, did the first Tommyfield Live, where I was talking about the release of my book, Touch and Go, which I wrote about the experience that I'd had and the experience of my family as well, whilst I was poorly. I was going through the first annual downward spiral where I was reliving everything from, I thought that everything had been going well since I'd come out of hospital in April 2021. I'd been in for over 3 months. I mean, I know that we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I'd come out of hospital and rehab in April of 2021, and I thought everything was going well up until December, and then in January all the anniversaries began, and I went through a massive downward spiral, breaking into tears. I was breaking my heart, really. Slightest little thing, I'd burst into tears. And I was working at the time, I burst into tears at my desk for no real reason. And when I did the Tommyfield Live, when I did that, it was the beginning of something of a major recovery for me, because I couldn't sustain going to work anymore. I couldn't sustain the emotional pressure. I didn't have the stamina. My decision making was all over the place. And when I came here and started to get involved, it was at my pace, with a massive support network, as I learned a whole new range of skills and applied an old range of skills to my new role here as a presenter. And so this was a massive, life-changing lifeline for me. It's really, it's bigger than I can say it, actually. And for someone who writes books, writes 100,000 words, sometimes not being able to find just a few to describe how important.
Yeah, you could have chosen anything, couldn't you? You could have gone, done some voluntary work for, I don't know, for a local woodworking group or whatever skills and talents, and you have plenty of those. I know, Mike. Yeah. But you chose community radio, which is a big thing, a big thing for somebody who's never really had any kind of experience in that. I don't know how we're going to fit this into the next hour, and I always say that because we do ask our guests to choose a selection of music for whatever reasons behind that they may have. So let's start that musical ball rolling now. The first track that you've chosen, and again you've put an awful lot of thought in, as all our guests do, David Gilmour, featuring Crosby and Nash, and it's Wish You Were Here. The rationale behind that, Mike.
Yeah, well, when the album that this is on came out, way back when I was approximately 20 years old, my brother had a flat, one of my brothers had a flat in Blakely, and I had a flat in Cheetham Hill. His wife, my then partner, future mother of my children, and every Saturday night we would go over to his house, and in those days you'd carry the album under your arm, sort of thing. Yeah. We'd go over to his flat, and he and I'd stay up really late listening to it. Just couldn't stop playing this album, and at the moment he's a bit poorly, and it just made me think, I want to hear that, but I like this particular acoustic version.
Well, we've got it for you. Wish You Were Here, and you are.
Yep.
And the crowd went wild. David Gilmour, Wish You Were Here. I can see why that would be a very great choice for a late night listen, Mike, with the album under the arm. Yeah. I suppose music has become quite important for you. I know you always like music anyway, you're always a fan. In fact, you often give me some grief, for instance, last Thursday when we did our live Billingtons broadcast, for starting the programme with Morecambe and Wise Bring Me Sunshine. What is wrong with that, we asked. But, there were others on the list, and you said, OK, we should have had that and that. Has music too been a bit of an easy pill to help you swallow?
It's been a great help, and it's been I suppose that I've got a little lazy as I've got older in terms of how I listen to music as new technology comes in. So I've got hundreds of vinyl and hundreds of CDs, and when Glenn, my wife, goes to bed, I'll go straight to YouTube on the TV and watch.
You're a bit of a tech geeky, aren't you then?
It's just easier, and so I get to watch favourites time and time again, but then I'm not exploring like I used to do, not buying something at random.
I know what you mean. Yeah. Rightly or wrongly, I've often referred to you when introducing you to people that come into the station as Mike Gill, Oldham's original Covid survivor, which is a bit of an odd thing to say, but I suppose we as a station have become very protective of you and your situation, and the fact that you found community radio to be a useful mouthpiece to tell your story. Let's just give a quick resume. I know when Graydon was doing what I'm doing a couple of years ago, as you say, he had his list of questions very because that's Graydon. Me, I tend to do it this way. But just for the benefit of listeners who perhaps didn't hear that, just briefly recap your story about how you became ill, how you found the situation where you were, and then we'll talk about what's happened since then.
Well, it was the beginning of January 2021, and Glenn, my wife, she tested positive, and she encouraged me to go and get tested, which I did. And I remember laughing and joking with the person doing the test, like, I'm immune from everything, me, nothing's gonna get me. And say Glenn had tested positive, and she was becoming quite ill, and then the next day I test positive, and I'm thinking, be able to stay off work for a couple of weeks, bit of a longer Christmas break. And then I went rapidly downhill. I was bedridden within a couple of days. I could hardly breathe. My temperature was soaring and freezing, up, down, and I didn't know whether I was coming or going. Delirious half the time. I didn't even notice that on some nights Glenn couldn't even get into bed with me because I was saturated with sweat and so hot it was uncomfortable for her, but I didn't notice that she wasn't there. She called the ambulance, and at first, the first one came and they decided not to take me, and then the second one came a couple of days later. Glenn insisted. If she hadn't insisted on doing it a second time, we would have just taken it as being, well, what can you do? Ambulance said no. Then the chances are that I wouldn't be here, because this time I was rushed to hospital, and I was in a special COVID ward for 2 weeks. In that ward there were only 4 beds, and there are things that I remember clearly and things that couldn't possibly have been the case. One of the things I remember clearly was calculating the odds on whether I'd survive.
That was running through
because
your mind.
When I was in that ward, the odds of survival were 3 to 1 of survival, and there was only 4 beds. When someone died, I remember callously thinking, well, that reduces my odds, and then another person died, but of course it didn't reduce my odds. The odds remained the same regardless, but I wasn't improving. I was getting worse. My oxygen levels were diabolical, and this was something that Glenn would buy me up on. Every time she spoke to a medic, every time she spoke to a physician consultant, it always began on my oxygen levels. That's how they reported it to the family. And then they put me in the ICU. They said, I'd agreed to be put into a coma, intubated, and put on a ventilator. And the odds had changed dramatically. They reversed. They were now 3 to 1 against survival. That's what they told me. Basically, said goodbye to Glenn and her granddaughter Chanel, and my sons Kieran and Liam, who were allowed to come in and say goodbye to me on that day. And I was put into a coma at the end of January. That lasted for more than 3 weeks before they started to pull me out of it. And in that time, after a week, on the 5th of February, the consultant phoned Glenn and said, prepare for Michael's end of life. And basically she said, no way, and put the phone down. And they phoned back, and she says, you talk about someone else's Michael, someone else's husband. not going to be him. And then that night, for some reason, at that point, I was producing 0 oxygen, and they couldn't provide me with more. My chest was not raising at all. They couldn't provide me with any more oxygen. And but then that night, I began to produce some oxygen on my own. Not much, but I'm beginning to produce it. And I lived. But shortly after that, I got pneumonia. Nearly died again. Oh, it was a bit up and down on it. My wife's in the audience here.
Let's. It's a story that you've told time and time again, and you know, for people who are listening now, I suppose this is including me. It just takes you back to those, and I describe them as very dark times for everybody. Let's pause for a quick musical break, and we'll have some words, and then we'll be back with Mike. Etta James, At Last, is your second choice. It's a classic, isn't it?
It is a classic, and it's really one of my wife's favourites too. And we had this played at our wedding when we got married, which was 12 years ago next month.
Just think.
So we've got a lot of anniversaries and near anniversaries at the moment, and so yeah, this is just such a lovely track, and you can never get fed up of hearing this.
We'll be back with Mike after this. I'm just having a look at our nice shiny new mock-up of a website. Yeah, sneak peek. There you go. Can't show you because it will be launched in not that too long a time. Much easier to navigate and to do things like donate. All this week on the station we've been marking our annual radiothon, and thank you to everybody who's made a contribution, in no matter how small or great. I'm looking at the book that Mike produced, wrote, directed, whatever authors do, I don't know, I can't put words to paper. Touch and Go, which is his story of how he survived COVID. And on the back, must have been that moment of a sigh of relief when those words, Mike is COVID free. And then the uphill battle began.
It wasn't me that heard those words, it was Glenn that heard those words, Mike is COVID free, from the hospital. I didn't understand that I was COVID free. When I came out of the coma, I didn't understand who I was or what I was or why I was there. I actually believed that I was being held captive in an experimental unit rather than being cared for in an ICU. And all the pinging of all the machines that were going on around there, I thought it was Good Friday and everyone was being called to church.
Like church bells, really?
Like church bells, wow. It sounded like that to me. And I believed that I was being held captive. And at some point, whilst they'd moved me from Pod B, which was the more intensive of the intensive care. That's where I was completely out of it. When I started to wake up, I had no voice because I had a tracheotomy, and I didn't understand that either. I thought they'd stolen my voice as part of the experiment. And when they moved me, I started to become more compos mentis, and a nurse said to me that I was COVID free at that point. That must have been a week or so after Glenn knew I was COVID free, and I didn't understand what she meant. And then she went away, and a couple of minutes later it started to dawn on me, I've had COVID. I've had COVID, you know, and like it was almost like I'd been resurrected. I was something else. I was someone else. I didn't remember anything.
Let me stop you right there, Mike, and just because I don't think anybody's asked you this question. If they have, forgive me, but I just want to be reminded about it. So you were admitted into hospital as Mike Gill version 1.
Yeah.
What was Mike Gill version 1 like? explain that. What were you like before COVID? As a person, as a character, as a human being?
Not as nice as I am now, I'll tell you.
Right. COVID did you a favour then.
Not all things are bad. The thing did allow me to reflect. One of the good things was when I came out of the coma and I'm lay there. There's nothing much you could do. I had massive muscle wastage. You could hardly move at all. Could hardly raise my hands. Had no voice. Had no mobility whatsoever. Almost totally paralysed. You've got a lot of time to think. And I didn't really understand what I was like before. It was very strange because it was like being born with a massive vocabulary and not knowing where you got it from, with a set of knowledge skills and not having a clue where they came from. I had this thing that I just did not know who I was or what I was, and I kind of learned a lot from the people that surrounded me. You see, all the nurses, the doctors, the cleaners, everyone that was in that ICU, and talking, being able to not so much talk, sign to my kids, Kira and Liam, and to Glenn and Kira's wife, Nadia, was able to have some sort of communication, and from that all I got was this sense of love and care and protection from everyone. And whatever I was before, I wanted to be what I was seeing now. That this was the kind of person that I wanted to be. I don't think it was all bad. It's not like I'm going from, some international war criminal or something like that to radio presenter on Oldham Community Radio. It's not
the two
that.
Sometimes can go hand in hand, as we know.
We're hiding a lot of war criminals at Oldham Community Radio. It's not that. It's just a lot of the stuff that I had from before, a lot of the baggage that went with the kind of working life that I had, senior HR type person, that kind of cut and thrust world that came from it shaped me over years. And you bring some of that character home from work. You don't drop it, and it's changed. I didn't need to be that.
No.
I was now able to be something better from that.
It's very, very cathartic. In fact, I mentioned this to you before. A similar thing happened to me yesterday, purely in a situation that I never would have thought I'd find myself in, but going back to a previous occupation that I used to be very, very much involved with in the veterinary world, and I listened to a speaker at the end of a conference session yesterday who came with a line that made me think, and as I said to you earlier on, Mike, it's one of those lines where you think, wow, this is going to be not necessarily life-changing, but certainly walking when you need it to be. The line was, and I don't mind sharing this because I think it's very important, that if you burn toast, as many people do, it means one of two things. You've either burnt the toast or you're having a stroke. And people listening to it, including me, sort of went, wow, that's something that makes you think about appreciating when you really do burn the toast, you know that things aren't going to be as bad as what they could be. And I guess that's a similar thing that you're looking at now, having had such a dramatic illness that affected thousands of people.
It continues to affect, and this is something that I always want to get over, that a lot of people, and I've met a lot of people, discuss this with a lot of people, it impacts for a long time. Long COVID impacts for a long time, and a lot of people don't understand that, because I will walk around and I'll look normal, but you've watched me develop over the past couple of years since I've been here, and you'll remember when I would walk up to the studio in the morning from the car park and need to get my breath back before we could start doing production meetings before a programme, this kind of thing. And it's only the past 2 or 3 months that I've been able to walk with more of a stride and less of a shuffle. And it continues to impact on me. Short-term memory all over the place. Long-term memory, some of it I don't trust, but a lot of it more accurate than before, especially facts, figures and stuff like that. And the past couple of weeks has been a bit difficult, and my wife Glenn, again, my protector as well, she will say, "You're getting tired, go to bed and have a rest," this sort of thing. And the past couple of weeks I've had to do that. When I first came out of rehab and hospital those years ago, I could not walk more than 100 metres. I was very tired a lot. I would have to go to bed every afternoon. I would have to have a couple of hours in bed, so I'd get up in the morning. Even having a shave, I would get up in the morning, have a shave, I'd have to go back to bed. It was that, it took it out of me. Building it up over the years has been a combination of effort, determination, sometimes exceeding myself, but going to the gym 3 times a week, making sure I walk more than drive it if I don't have to. And I started doing that by, if I went to the shop, if I drove to the shop, drove to a supermarket, I'd park at the far end of the car park, so I'd have to walk it from the car there to the store, so to build up that stamina.
Yeah. We're going to chat about what's happened since. Obviously, you're here, you're telling the story now. I want to, after we've heard your next piece, Mike, just think about how you feel, and this may give you an opportunity to think about that and to choose some words which can be broadcast about the way that the UK particularly went about the COVID journey, if you like, what we've learned since, what you've researched, because that's one of your big strengths, the research and facts and figures, about the aftermath of the pandemic. And, well, we'll talk more when we come back. I had a dream. I have a dream. No, not the Martin Luther King one. This is Audience, isn't it?
Audience, yeah. Well, for me, Audience was one of the bands to be into.
I never heard of them.
When Howard Worth was the...
Hang on, I feel this is going to be a Mike Gill. Did I ever tell you when I rubbed shoulders with, or when I saw them down at the Apollo, which we're well used to, aren't we, Dave? Bumped into.
No, I've never met Howard Worth, but Audience is just symbolic of my youth. I got into these, I would have been about 16 or 17. They're a band from the late 60s, early 70s, and they were just the cool band to be into, and partly because they were obscure, massive talent, and I mean there was another track that I wanted to play from the album that this comes from, but it's too long. But yeah, this one, just a beautiful sound, and Howard Worth's voice is so distinct. You wouldn't think it'd be so melodious as it is with this. It's just
from the long-haired days of Mike Gill.
Yeah, the hippy days.
I had a dream. And welcome back to Saturday's Tommyfield Live here on Oldham Community Radio, the award-winning Oldham Community Radio. We must never tire of saying that. Our guest, of course, is our very own, it's nice to be able to say that, very own Mike Gill, who, as I said, is Oldham's original COVID survivor. You came through it, Mike, and, you know, just amazing that the story that you've told. Let's just think for a moment about the time since, and we use this phrase, the end of the pandemic. You must that really must rub you up the wrong way, because it's not ended at all, has it?
It's not ended for a lot of people who continue to be ill. It's not ended for the hundreds of people that are dying every month from COVID. As you say, I do tend to research these things, and so I use a lot of government figures, Office of National Statistics, National Audit Office, all these kinds of sources to get the information from. So I know when it peaked, when it fell, all of those things and all the actions that preceded each of those times. So it's not gone away, and the figures go up to December of last year, where hundreds were dying a month, sometimes hundreds a week, 3 figures a week of COVID. But I think that we've got to learn lessons to move forward. You can't learn lessons without looking at what went wrong the first time round. And it was like it kicked off badly in the March of the beginning of March when the lockdown took place. There'd only been 5 deaths in the UK.
Yeah.
But a series of inactions and silly mistakes by the government at the time, they could see how rapidly this spread. They could see from Wuhan, they could see from Lombardy in northern Italy how it was spreading, how the World Health Organization had declared it an emergency in January and a pandemic by the end of February. They knew that things had to be done, and yet after the 3rd of March, when the Prime Minister, flanked by Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, set forward the government's action plan on it, a week later the Prime Minister was at Twickenham watching Wales playing an international rugby match with 82,000 other people. A week on the 10th of March, the Cheltenham races went ahead. Over 250,000 people attended the Cheltenham races, a minimum of 60,000 a day. That week, Liverpool played Atletico Madrid, and 3,000 Spanish fans flew over from. And on the 19th of March, the government issued its instructions to hospitals on how to free up beds. Basically, throw out a lot of people that were untested into the homes. Now, think of all those actions then, and think that at the beginning of March, only 5 people had died. In April, more than 32,000 people died. 32,000 people died in April.
It's unlikely that Hancock and Johnson and all the others, those names that were so prominent at the time, will be listening to this. And I probably, as a journalist, I could only ask you as a fellow journalist the question, what would you like to say to them today?
Well, we have a couple of problems at the moment because we're not allowed to make a lot of political comment.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Mike.
And also, we're not allowed to swear.
You were listening. Yeah.
Yes, I were.
No, I say it with a tinge of sarcasm, but I mean, you must. Are you bitter?
Yeah, angry because as the lockdown began to take effect, the first thing they did was start to ease on it. When you got figures down to hundreds, and then 1 week down to, I think it was 92 in July, they started the easements on it. They started easing up on lockdown for economic reasons. So then you had Eat Out to help out, and as Chris Whitty said, Eat Out to help out the virus. You had those kinds of things happening, and then the numbers started to creep up. By autumn, everyone was saying, we need a circuit breaker. We need a circuit breaker because it's going to start spreading really bad. And they refused, they held back on it, they wouldn't do it. They had this multi-tiered regional system that they've acknowledged didn't work. And then at Christmas, they have another announcement on Christmas Day. Everyone can go meet everyone else and have a big hug because the virus is having the day off on Christmas Day.
Lessons will never be learned, will they?
But then, in January, you had the second spike of over 34,000 people died in January. And it was that January that I got it, it was that January that Glenn got it. It was that January that I nearly died and became one of those stats. I became one of those people. So those 2 months, a total of more than 65,000 people died, and you could see that in each of those months, the decisions that preceded them, it was like it was a government that would not learn. And then in the inquiries since, all the things that have happened since, they've kind of denied. How can you learn a lesson if you deny your responsibility within that, within what happened, within all those people who necessarily died, and all those people that were sent back into the care homes in that march?
There are so many elements, Mike. We could talk for hours. You really must come back as a guest for a third time, because again we've not even really scratched the surface. The clock's beaten us, my friend. You know what it's like. We've got to keep an eye on that because you're a seasoned professional. We want to get your last track in, or as much as we can of it, which is Don't Give Up, Willie Nelson and Sinead O'Connor. That's your motto?
Well, so yeah, and I know that the Pete Gabriel version, the original version, everyone's going to know and like. Willie Nelson is a bit of an acquired taste, but I like this particular version because his voice is so plaintive, so it's got such expression to it, and Sinead O'Connor so supportive, and it's just the one that I really wanted to end this program on, because it is don't give up. You can fight, you've got to do.
We've taken a couple of tracks out already, Mike, but we will include them on Thursday's Oldham today, including the full version of this. So can I say a huge thanks to our special guest, Mike Gill, once again. Please, your appreciation for Mike, and thank you to our technical producer, as always, Phil Edmonds. Do come back and see us again very, very soon. Next Thursday would be good, Mike. Yeah. From me at Wolstenholme, have a great afternoon and take care. From everybody at Tommyfield Live, bye for now.